It's time for Windows Weekly. Paul and Mary Jo Foley are here despite the heat back east. They're going to talk about that big $6 billion write-off that Microsoft took just the other day, the Vanity Fair article, holy cow, and a lot more about Windows, the Ocho. It's all coming up next on Windows Weekly.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Windows Weekly is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com. This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley, episode 268, recorded July 5th, 2012. Paul Gets Served. Windows Weekly is brought to you by Audible.com. To download a free audiobook of your choice, visit audible.com/windows. It's time for Windows Weekly. This is the show where Paul and Mary Jo come in and they talk about the latest from Microsoft. They're sweltering right now back
from
east.
a back porch in Maine.
Yeah, we sit around the Cracker Barrel and talk about Microsoft. I wish, we should have built the set. When we built the set,
Cracker Barrel theme.
Should have had a little, wood stove, a Cracker Barrel checkerboard with corn cobs.
Back porch.
Back porch. We could have done a show. Maybe we'll build that still. It's not undoable. We have a back alley.
I thought you were doing a Canadian accent there for a second.
Oh, no. That's my main accent.
That's your main accent.
We got a Canadian in here. He could tell us how to do it.
Say sometimes dead is better.
Sometimes dead is better. I end up starting to sound like a Kennedy. Ask not what dead is good for. Ask what you can do for death. All right. This is a show about Microsoft. I don't know how we... You know why? Here's the deal.
Ostensibly.
Here's the deal. It's the day after Independence Day in the United States of America, which means this is a dead week because when a holiday, a major national holiday, is on Wednesday...
Oh, I know. It's the worst.
Nothing gets done on Monday and Tuesday, but you still have to show up for work, and nothing gets done on Thursday, Friday. But
and then today's like Monday again.
It's
Monday after a short weekend, and it's so wrong.
Horrible.
It's like yeah.
And I think we're probably we had so much tech news last couple of weeks that I don't think anything's going to happen for a month.
We were engorging like ticks in the back of a calf.
Yeah, we're filled with blood,
bloated with news blood.
Oh God.
Wow, what an image.
Pop it like a little zit.
Okay, stop now. Stop, Paul.
I'm sorry.
There is actually a huge story.
Is there?
I think, now, apparently you and
Are
Mary...
we actually doing the show now?
Yeah.
Have we started?
No,
okay.
That was the start. I know it's hard to believe, but there is huge news. Apparently...
yes.
And I think this is a whole holy cow, but apparently you and Mary Jo and I have differing opinions. Microsoft has announced that for anyone who's ever owned Windows, it's $40 to go to Windows 8.
Yeah.
That's Apple pricing, man.
That's better than Apple pricing.
Better than Apple.
Is it better than Apple?
Well,
it is.
Apple's going to be $20.
I'll explain why.
Okay, go ahead.
Yep. I don't mean right this second, but I mean I can. I didn't mean to jump ahead as well.
I don't think Microsoft has ever offered such an inexpensive upgrade. I mean, normally we're talking $100, right?
Well, the way what I compare this to is that Windows 7 Family Pack from 3 years ago that everyone loves so much, and they made them bring it back because it was such a great price. And so if you think about how that worked, I mean, that would have been $50 a shot for
times
copies
three.
Times three, but you had to buy three. They were $10 more per unit,
right?
And you were getting a mid-level version of Windows 7, the home premium version. And in this version, you're getting the nicest retail version you can get, Windows 8 Pro. I mean, this is a much, much better deal.
Yeah.
And you can buy them one at a time. You can just,
it's huge.
You can just buy one or two if that's all you need. Yeah, great deal.
To what can we attribute this? Or is it I mean, there's two ways it'll go here. One, a deep-rooted fear that no one will buy Windows 8. Or the other, and I prefer this choice, a commitment to making Windows 8 the best version of Windows ever.
They've done two things now that address the big questions around why would anyone get this. The first one is, of course, offering people to buy a new PC, a way to get this thing very cheap through Microsoft very expediently. $15. Great deal as well.
Right.
A lot of those people would maybe not have paid $50 for that or whatever, and maybe think they don't want it, but it's $15. What the heck? $40, I think, is the same thing. If we don't know what the standard upgrade pricing is going to be for Windows 8. Honestly, my argument has always been that it should be this kind of thing. I mean, I don't think they should do the normal $99 or $149, whatever. But this answers a lot of questions, right? I mean, how do you get people to upgrade? You basically give it away. You make it so cheap that they'd feel kind of silly not getting it.
Right.
And this is just I mean, you can look at it kind of cynically, but I mean, I think this is really smart. The only thing that's not smart about it, and maybe they'll fool us or surprise us, is that it's temporary. I wish they would just leave it on.
Oh, it's not permanent?
Give people an incentive. No, it's only through the end of January next year.
Well, that's enough
it's
time.
A promotion.
And
they're going to extend
exactly.
that,
They could make it permanent.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so. Of course,
but just to make this fair, Mary Jo doesn't think
I'm being the Eeyore.
You don't
today.
think this is a big deal?
I'm being
You're
the
always
Eeyore
like this,
instead of
Mary
Paul.
Jo. Tired of it.
Paul has transferred his evil genius through the interwebs over here now.
It's because it's 1,000,000 degrees in New York City right now.
That's it. Sure. I'm feeling cranky. No, actually, so I think it's great. It's awesome. How can you say that's a bad price? I agree with that. But how few people do upgrades? Very few.
Right.
Like the way people get Windows is you buy a new PC and it's preloaded. I mean, some people, like, a lot of the listeners on the show are definitely the kind of people who do upgrades, but like normal people like me. Do I ever upgrade my upgrade?
Not our
system?
listeners.
Never.
Normal.
I never have. I just wait till I get a new PC to get a new version of Windows. I have never put a newer version of Windows on any PC I have.
Right.
Oh, I hope to fix that someday, about 3 months from now. But
maybe what Microsoft is saying is this is the one you're going to do that with, Mary Jo.
Yeah. The other thing is, remember that Windows 8, like Windows 7, will run on that same hardware.
Right.
Anything dating back to Windows Vista should run Windows 8 fine.
Right.
And so it's not like the equations of the past. The other thing that I don't think very many people understand about Windows 8 is that, and this is one of those things I keep going back and re-looking at this because it just doesn't seem right to me, because you get so used to the conventional wisdom. But for whatever it's worth, upgrade installs this time around may actually be better in general and more reliable, if you will, than clean installs on existing hardware. I know it sounds nuts, but that's been my experience so far.
And you mentioned that last week. But now, is this also the case that this is a digital upgrade so that it's like the Windows Anywhere, only instead of going to a higher-end version of Windows, you're actually going to the new Windows? I mean, is it digital?
It's digital, but one of the things that it was weird that the morning the day that they revealed this, I had written an article that day completely coincidentally about the web-based installer, which is how you get this. And this is an incredible electronic delivery system that does a lot of things. But the two key pieces of it are it builds off of the normal setup routine. If you ran it off of a disk or a USB key or whatever, it includes Windows Setup, like the normal manual tool. But it also includes integrated into it two previously available tools that a lot of people didn't know about, the Upgrade Advisor and Windows Easy Transfer. And those things make for a better setup experience. But the other piece, the other half of it is, it allows you during the process to make that manual disk if that's what you want. So it's not just electronic. You can download the software and then burn it to disk or create a USB key, which you can keep forever, and then install later using that media instead. And so it really is the best of both worlds.
The other thing that has come to light since Microsoft talked about this upgrade is this also is the price for people who are testing Windows 8. That wasn't clear from the post, because the post from Microsoft said it was for XP, Windows 7, and Vista users. But they're also saying, I just asked to make sure, and they're saying, yes, if you have been testing Windows 8 release preview, you can also upgrade for the $40 too.
So what that tells, I think, it's interesting because this means that it's everybody, right? If you have the hardware that can run Windows 8, you can upgrade. You get the upgrade pricing.
It's everybody. It's everybody.
This goes back to that thing. I remember I was in this like fetid little awful hotel room in New York City for the Windows 7 launch, reinstalling, trying to figure out whether.
Show from that fetid little hotel
I did.
Room.
I was laying down in the bed.
I remember that.
I don't think I could
your
even
legs
stand
were
up in this room.
kicking behind you.
Yeah. I don't think it was long enough to hold my whole body.
I felt like I was talking to Gidget.
Yeah.
So there's this Windows 7. It's so great.
That's exactly what I was like. But but I remember this because the question at the time was whether this upgrade would just work. Would it support these clean installs? Would it just work for anybody?
Right.
And it turned out, no, it didn't. And I think with this version, not necessarily from a technical perspective, but from a kind of a functional perspective, they're turning the page on this. Like, look, if you can run Windows 8, you qualify. You just qualify. You have the PC. You've paid for Windows. You qualify. And I think that's neat. I think that's the way it should always be.
Well, you were right, though. I think it was last week you were guessing how this would work, and it is more of a migration than an upgrade if you're running Windows 8, which is kind of ironic, right? So you can carry over your personal files, but your applications and your settings are not going to carry over, so you're going to have to reinstall.
So when you say upgrade, that's why it works so well. It really is a clean install that preserves your data.
This is probably not a good conversation to have here off the top of my head because it's very convoluted, but in the old days, they used to support, clean installs, obviously fresh install of the OS. You would have upgrades, and there's really like an in-place upgrade, which is where you take an existing OS and you bring it up to the new version of the OS, and everything carries across. That's an in-place upgrade. And then you would have a migration. And a migration, for consumers, was the type of thing you would do through Windows Easy Transfer, where you would take, data and some settings, and you would then bring them back, and then you'd have to reinstall your applications. And in Windows 8, it's actually a little more complex than that. Without getting into the nuances of it, it supports all of what I just said, plus a few other things. There are different versions of it where you can take settings and apps, and data, and then different, parts of that. So if I understand what Mary Jo just said about Windows 8 RP, if you're doing, an upgrade, which is like a migration really, you said that you can bring over data. Is that what you said?
Personal files.
That's data.
Okay, which I think is documents. Data.
Yeah. Okay. But not settings and not applications. Okay. Right. So applications, this is a migration basically, right? You lose applications, you have to reinstall those. That's not a huge deal. But the interesting thing is because you're using Windows 8, as long as you log in with the same Windows Live ID, you'll actually get your settings.
Well, not all of them, but a lot of them.
Not all of them, but I think the ones that are
important. You won't get like your network settings. But you'll get your Hotmail.
Actually, in some cases, you don't.
You wouldn't get you wouldn't get if you had OpenDNS configured. I don't know. I'm just trying to.
No. Of course, not that stuff. But I mean, if you look at the settings pane in the sync settings pane in that PC settings Metro configuration, the stuff you get, and there's even more.
No,
there's a lot of stuff. Yeah,
I really like that.
That's way better than anything they've ever offered in the past for people who were using a beta or RC version of Windows. In fact, if I remember what I was told, I think the story was they never offered
Would you
an
get
upgrade.
the Wi-Fi access spot and passward? Does that get preserved? I'm sorry, you didn't want to talk about this.
I'd have to. Well, no. Here's why. So obviously, I'm writing a book about Windows 8,
right?
As you know, with Raphael,
right?
And Microsoft has a list. If you go to you can just look at it. You go to PC settings, and they list some of the stuff that's synced through these various controls.
Right.
As it turns out, there's actually more stuff than they list there that's synced, and so we've kind of documented that for the book, so I just don't know it off the top of my head. Mm-hmm. But the other thing we're sort of thinking about releasing is a tool that would provide a more granular control over this stuff. So, for example, in Windows 8, you can there's a personalized switch. It's on or off. It says colors, background, lock screen, and your account picture. Well, what if you want to sync your lock screen, your colors, and your account picture, but not your background because you want each PC to have a different background, right? You can't do it in Windows 8, but what if there was a tool that would let you do that?
Right.
So I guess the point is I have a hard time keeping
I get it.
track of what's what in my head because I'm just saying this off the top of my head. But
this is also secondary to – I mean, it's important to say. I mean, it's one of the reasons you can say with some confidence that upgrading to Windows 8 is doable. But as Mary Jo is pointing out, it's not really an upgrade. It's a migration. It's a clean install in effect.
Microsoft,
let me read you their exact wording to me. This might help. This is from the Windows team. They just said, assuming the customer has a previous version of Windows installed before the release preview, they'll just be able to upgrade from the release preview. They won't need to reinstall the previous version to do the upgrade. They can just do the upgrade on top of the release preview. That's their exact wording. And then the whole thing about the granularity of what you carry over, that was something that Computer World has them on the record saying about the files and the settings and all.
I hesitate to say this as advice, and I'm not actually positive if this is true, but one of the things I've noticed, because as I said earlier, in my experience, there's been a better experience upgrading than clean installing. And by that, I mean a number of things, but the important bit is device manager type stuff where all of your drivers are accounted for and so forth. It seems like when you go for an upgrade, if Windows 8 doesn't have new drivers, it will just take whatever it has from Windows 7. Whereas if you do a clean install on that same machine, you'll have entries in device manager where drivers are not accounted for. I've done these installs where of course I install Windows 7, and one of the things you can do in Windows 7 is not put in a product key during install. And so since I'm going to be upgrading it anyway, I skip that and I install it, and I do all the Windows updates, and I install the antivirus and all that stuff. And you kind of document how Windows 8 reacts to that when you do various types of installs. I wonder, I mean, again, I'm not even suggesting that people do this, but I'm curious, based on what she just said, whether they're doing some kind of a test for the previous version of the OS, really, or if that's just their kind of lawyerly way of saying we have to say this. But is there really, in fact, a technical check for a previous version of the OS? Because it seems like you could do a clean install of the release preview, or do an upgrade install off of Windows 7 where you had, in fact, never put in a product key, and it would still work.
I wondered if it was something to do with activation and genuine advantage and all that, like to make sure you have a real copy.
Yep. Yeah. I wonder. I'm gonna look into that. That's curious.
The main point still stands. We've kind of gotten in the weeds, but the point still stands.
I know. I'm sorry.
Cheap upgrade. Now you said, Paul, though.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna have to ask you about this.
It's my fault for going down that rabbit hole. I'm sorry.
You said, Paul, that is a better deal than the $20 OS 10 upgrade. How do you explain that? Explain that to me.
How is something that's twice as expensive, in fact, less expensive, in Paul's bizarro world?
That's my question.
I'll tell you, Leo. I'll tell you.
Fill in some of the gaps there, but that's the question, yes.
It's because I feel that because Macs are more expensive than PCs, you're already paying a premium for that system.
Well, you don't really buy the operating system with OS 10 because Apple's a hardware company that throws in an operating system.
Yeah, so they should be applauded.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
They should be applauded for charging $20. But I guess on the other hand, you could also make the argument, why isn't it just free? I mean, you've already paid a lot of money for, a lot of people will say, I don't mind paying more for an Apple product because they have better support,
Right.
And to which my argument would always be, well, I feel like you shouldn't have to pay for support unless you really need it. And it's not necessarily.
And that's what PC manufacturers did. They unbundled support, and if you want superior support, most of them offer some sort of gold level paid support.
Yeah, I think
I think that's a legitimate point of view.
Yeah, what it boils down to is just that on the Windows side of the fence, for better or worse, I mean, we've just gone down a certain path here, and we have lots of partners on all fronts. And on the hardware front, we have dozens of companies that make hundreds of different kinds of computers, and you have a choice of the device types and price ranges and so forth. And so this $40 price is a good deal just across the board. These machines tend to be a lot less expensive than equivalent Macs. On the Mac side, $20 is a good deal. There's no way to dump on that. I mean, it's a great deal. But, again, like I said, I feel like it's wrong to say I'm only paying $20 for the upgrade because you also paid a premium for that Mac, and I'm sure that part of that premium went to pay for the development of Mac OS 10.
Right.
And, you're paying for it. You are paying for it. Of course you are.
That's a legitimate point.
Not as nutso as it sounds.
Not as crazy as you might have thought.
I'm not a crazy person with a shopping cart and a mall parking lot, Leo.
Just ask Joshua Topolsky, and then you'll know. So,
I don't have hats,
So, somebody in the chat room, Reality Isn't, is asking a very kind of obscure question, but I think given our audience, it might not be so obscure. He says he actually bought the the Microsoft Build tablet that came with Windows 8 DP. Would he be able to upgrade that?
Yeah, of course. And I don't know. I'm not positive that those were ever for sale. But
yes. I know how he bought it.
Like on eBay or something?
Yeah. It's not exactly. Let me explain. Reality isn't. That's not exactly in Microsoft's mind buying it.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, he bought it. That's
he bought
fine.
it. Yep.
I would say that there's on the one hand there's going to be the Microsoft response and on any computer, and then on the other hand there's going to be what really happens. And if I'm again based on what Mary Jo just read about their description of this, my take on this is they have to say certain things for legal reasons.
Right.
But I think what they're really doing is saying if you own a Windows license for a computer that can run Windows 8, you qualify for the upgrade. Which, by the way, is true. There's no doubt about it because they're supporting upgrades through versions of Windows that go all the way back to XP with Service Pack 3. So Vista class hardware and newer, which is really only the type of machine you put on Windows 8 anyway, you do qualify. It's just common sense. It's the way, So I guess in this case specifically, because this was a special promotion that Microsoft provided developers with these machines, 5,000 of them I think was the figure at Build last year. I think obviously they're going to support some method of this. I mean, you might make the argument that they should give that away to those people, but $40 certainly is a good deal if they do not. I expect them to address that machine explicitly at some point.
I think it's less than a chicken dinner at Palisades Park. It's not so expensive that you couldn't afford to buy that. Is my thing.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I actually like the meal comparison because really, I mean,
it's a meal. It's a dinner.
I had lunch today with my wife. We spent more than $20. We bought Mountain Lion. I mean, if we had a dinner tonight, that would be Windows 8 Pro.
And Mountain Lion. You're set. You're great. You're great.
One day.
Not
bad.
One day. Not bad.
Don't eat out every day, but
no,
you don't buy an OS upgrade every day.
Right.
Either.
It's going to last a lifetime.
Yeah,
or at least a couple of years.
3 years. Yeah.
Golly, have I told you how much I missed you since last week? HP has said there is news. I thought this was going to be a slow week. HP
has a lot of news.
There's a lot of news here. In fact, there's news that's going to make Paul cry a little later, and I'm looking forward to that. Mary Jo will make Paul cry. You want to do it now, Mary Jo?
Wow.
No, we're saving that for later.
We talked about drinking beer earlier, and maybe I will need beer for that, so I can just kind of cry
later
into
on. Paul will be crying into his beer, but right now, HP is not making a Windows RT tablet. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop and all of the OEMs to say, okay, Microsoft, you want to do it? You do it.
But, that you got to be careful with that because what if RT is what takes off? If you're Dell or HP or any of the traditional PC makers, I mean, you don't want to screw yourself out of the future.
So
of the
you don't
PC.
make an announcement and you watch. Has anybody announced an RT?
Yes. Asus, Toshiba, and Acer have all announced plans for
the Taiwanese.
The Kias of the PC industry.
But
right?
Let's go back and actually look at this HP story because this story got so convoluted along the way. So here's what happened. There was a rumor site that put out a thing saying HP was so mad about Microsoft coming out with its own Surface tablet that it had said to Microsoft, we're not doing an RT tablet. That's it. And when I went back and looked, HP had never said they were doing an RT tablet.
In fact, HP said they're getting out of the PC business at one point.
I looked everywhere. I'm like, did they ever say they were doing one? No. So then Bloomberg went to HP and said, so are you doing this or aren't you? What's the word? And they said, we're not doing a Windows RT tablet this year.
This year.
May do one next year.
This year. That's not such a big deal. Yeah.
No, and then HP also told Bloomberg, and by the way, we had already made this decision before Microsoft ever announced the Surface or told us about it.
Yep. Had nothing to do with it.
You believe that?
I mean, that's their statement on the record. I do believe it because I think Microsoft's plan with the Windows RT tablets was to have kind of a slow ramp up, very controlled, like have a few partners out this year, and then if it works, takes off, and everything goes well, then add more partners next year.
Do you think we'll hear an announcement from Lenovo and Dell?
About doing it or not doing it?
About not doing it?
I don't know.
I think they're not going to say, but I don't think they're going to do it.
So I asked Microsoft, I said, is there a list of who is going to come out with a Windows RT tablet this year? And they said there is a list, and we are not making that list public.
Right. I think it's not surprising that the traditional PC makers, and I guess that would be Dell, HP, Lenovo, are not jumping into this thing first, right? Because this is not the type of device they make. I don't know that they've ever been successful selling anything like this. Lenovo,
that's a good point,
actually sells Android-based tablets that run on ARM, I guess, but they've never really taken off, and I'm not sure what the expertise is there. But as far as delivering a Windows product that runs on a different architecture that sort of looks like the other products they make and performs in a similar fashion, I think this is going to require some time for these guys. I mean, that to me is not all that surprising or controversial, nor is it surprising that some of the we're in addition to those kind of tier 2 Korean companies that you mentioned, Asus, Acer, and Samsung. There's going to be some companies we've never heard of that are going to be coming out with Windows RT tablets, and who knows? Maybe some of them will be very successful for whatever reason. It's going to be. It requires a certain kind of expertise that I just don't think a lot of these PC companies have yet.
It makes perfect sense because those companies make tablets now with Android on them. So it's a simple enough. I mean, hardware-wise, they've already kind of in that space, and that makes perfect sense. And then Asus, Acer, and Samsung can test the waters, and Lenovo, Dell, and HP can sit back.
Plus, it's weird enough for Microsoft to make 2 competing OSs, but now HP, Dell, Asus, Acer, whoever are going to have to make 2 product lines that compete with each other internally as well. I mean, that's a strange thing to ask a hardware company to do.
I think Microsoft must have known this. It was my initial reaction is that as soon as I heard about Windows RT Surface, I said, well, good, Microsoft will probably dominate that, and then the PC makers will do all the Windows 8 Pro stuff.
Yeah. Another of our listeners has another idea. He kind of along the lines you guys are suggesting. Matthew Cromert says maybe Microsoft told HP you're not going to do the right? Maybe it wasn't.
Well, that's an interesting take.
Because there were when was it? About a month ago, there was the round of stories that said HTC wanted to do a Windows RT tablet, and Microsoft told them no. Right. So that could be
maybe
true.
That wasn't such a unique event. Right? Maybe a bunch of companies were told that.
Interesting. I like that conspiracy theory.
Because do you remember there was the New York Times had a story around the time Microsoft rolled out the Surface, and they said in their story the whole reason that Microsoft got so frustrated, or one of the big reasons, and decided to do the Surface was because HP's slate that they showed 2 years ago at CES was so horrible.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it came out. It just came out a year and a half late, and it was a piece of crud.
I don't even remember it.
Don't worry about it. You're not alone. It was not
really?
particularly interesting. Oh, yeah.
They did.
It looked just like the thing they showed on stage, except it had an Atom processor and a gigabyte of RAM, and it was really sad.
Wow.
I wonder if part of the issue, what would be worse, like just a handful of WinRT tablets or one WinRT tablet from every PC maker, all of which are lackluster, right? What could kill Windows RT quicker than Dell and HP and all those companies throwing one of those things into the market, and it performs terribly. It doesn't run Metro apps well compared to the PCs. Maybe they just want to make sure that this is done right.
Yeah.
Maybe it literally is a quality over quantity thing.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. But then what threw even more fuel on this fire last week was right when this whole controversy happened, did Microsoft decide it? Microsoft acknowledges to Bloomberg, by the way, Steve Guggenheimer, who has been a really long-time Microsoft veteran and who is the head of their OEM division, the one who has to work with HP, Lenovo, and Dell, he's taking a sabbatical, and when he comes back, he's not going to be in that role anymore. Wow. So everybody's like, oh.
Do they really – is his nickname Googs?
Googs.
Okay, just checking.
The thing is,
I think I went to school with him.
We all went to school with a Googs.
I remember Googs, yeah.
Did you go to school with any Sullys? I went to school too. So
yeah, I went to a school with a guy named Dink.
Yes, I still have friends I call Dink fairly regularly.
Yeah. Hey, Dink.
It's never complimentary. Anyway, no. I wonder, though, if that, too, is not, in fact, completely unrelated.
Right. That Microsoft claimed it was.
It's not like he was behind this. Like he convinced Steven Sinofsky to stand on stage and introduce this device that Microsoft didn't really want, I mean, it's so ludicrous that he would somehow be like the fall guy for something that might end up being really successful for Microsoft, and we'll see.
And if it was connected in some way, who can blame him for not wanting that job right now? I'm sure it's not a fun job to have right now.
That's a good point too. Maybe he left on of his own. Yeah, maybe he was against it, and this is his way of.
Do consumers know that HP said that they were going to get out of the PC business? I think they might. I think they might have heard a little noise about that, and it sticks in their mind, and they're thinking in their back of their heads, yeah, maybe not from HP.
Yeah, maybe. It's hard to tell. It's hard to get a finger on the pulse of.
Well, when I talk on the radio show, I think that I get that feeling that there are a lot, because now I'm talking to mainstream computer buyers, right? And I get the feeling that HP tarnished its reputation by saying, "Oh, we're not going to do PCs," and then changing its mind. And there's always that lingering feeling that maybe they're going to change their minds again, and we're going to buy.
Yeah. By the way, that's if you heard that, and that's a natural thing to think.
Sure. So really, the only question is how many people knew this. She knew.
My mom said to me one day when I was talking to her, by the way, is HP getting out of the PC business? I'm like, okay.
See, that's a really good. Knows. Yep. See,
it's funny.
So I'm thinking that's got to have hurt them a little bit.
Yeah, I could see that. Although I believe they're still the number one.
Are they?
PC maker in the world. I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they are the number one Windows vendor.
Oh well, then I stand corrected because that means that they're still selling. Yeah. So it's a big deal if HP says we're not going to make it a Windows RT tablet unless Microsoft told them.
Unless they do one next year.
And if they do one in 2013, which is, let's face it, just a few months from now. So there you go.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. Yep. Yeah, you have to think these companies have all finalized exactly what they're doing for the Windows 8 launch. I mean, this thing's going to be done within a week or two, so it's not like we should start thinking about the machines. Does anyone have any ideas for the type of hardware we'd like to ship? Anyone?
You want to make should we
cricket chirps like
by the way, just to refresh me, Surface was going to the Windows RT version of Surface Windows are going to come out shortly after Gold Master, right?
No, I think they said with general availability.
GA, that's right. They used the word GA. So what does that mean?
That means this fall, probably.
September, October. And then 3 months later for Windows 8 Pro tablets, Surface.
Or just in time for the President's Day holiday celebration.
Those big January sales. Cue right up.
That's good stuff.
All right. So that does mean that, in theory, if there are other people making Windows RT tablets, they would want to ship day and date, right? Or no?
Yeah. I mean, you want to ship in time for the holidays.
Especially if Microsoft's only selling Surface at Microsoft stores. Mm-hmm. You're going to make, if you're Acer, Asus, or Samsung, and you want to be in Best Buy at the same time.
Sure.
So we should be.
What you want to do is hear a Best Buy employee say something like, "This is just like that Microsoft Surface thing, except you can buy it here."
And it's, with our great service and support.
Yes. Well,
how'd you like to have the Geek Squad working on your side?
Maybe.
Do they have to come in that little Volkswagen? That's all. I'm just asking.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which makes me wonder about Windows 9.
As it should.
If GA is just days away.
If that's what it's really going to be called.
Oh, hell. You said the same thing about Windows 8. I think they are now in sequence. They're in lockstep. Oh, they could throw us all and skip version 9 and just make it Windows 10 with an X.
I think the next thing to do is to reimagine the Windows numbering scheme.
Numbering.
That word is banned on this show. No more
reimagining. No more. No. We've had it with reimagining.
Done. Or we're doing a drinking game if we're going to use it. That's all.
We're going to reimagine sobriety. I can apply it to anything, Mary Jo.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's not bad. That's not bad. Yeah. Sobriety reimagined. Do you want to talk about...
I think we should.
Let's talk about speed.
Speed. I feel the need for speed.
Yeah.
Okay, Goose, take it. She's Goose, right? Right, Paul?
I'm Goose.
Yeah,
Call me
just checking.
Googs.
Okay, Googs.
Just call me Googs.
Am I the Iceman in this scenario?
You're the Iceman. Well, I'm curious. I don't know. One of you is the Iceman. One of you is Goose. Right. Just remember, Goose gets it in the end.
Okay, I'm
We
Googs.
all get it in the end.
Are you wearing a red shirt, Mary Jo? Wait a minute.
Oh, no.
Right.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Goo.
Uh-oh.
I am not the
Googs.
goo.
Uh-oh.
Send Googs down to the planet in a red shirt. She'll be fine.
Okay, Maverick. So
Yeah, so Paul and I have been talking about this on IM a lot lately, actually. Like, what if they do speed up Windows, the delivery pace of Windows, right? Like, we've been used to every 2 to 3 years, blah, blah, blah. Here's a new big giant version of Windows. But what if they start finally actually getting faster and more fluid? Another buzzword.
Faster, more fluid.
Like what if the next version of Windows is next year?
I think the technical
What
term
if it's
is
not a version of Windows too,
nimble.
right? I mean, what if
we were
I sort of
thinking for a while this might be the last version of Windows as a desktop OS.
I don't actually see that happening, but there's something interesting. If you look at Windows RT, it's not Windows RT 8, right? It's Windows RT.
Right.
And of course, Apple is moving to this sort of model where they don't really talk about version numbers or numbers. It's just the product. And I could picture, given the immaturity of Metro, you could make this argument that this is a platform that needs to evolve pretty quickly, much like the .NET framework did the first several years or the first forever that it was around, whatever, and that there were different ways to handle that. Maybe they stick with the 8 name for a while. There was a rumor actually this week. We don't have this in the notes, but that Microsoft has started seizing up the Xbox 8 domain names.
That's interesting.
In a way that maybe they, line these things all together.
Right.
That's a little weird because that console doesn't come out till next year, and it has a much longer life cycle than Windows does, or any version of Windows. Unless they intend to keep it that way for a little while, I mean, could Windows 8 be there, Mac OS 10, where OS 10 has gone through version 10 points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way through whatever they're on now, 8 probably. We don't have any information about this, but it seems like they need to, right? I mean, it's inescapable that 3 years, they said that for Windows 8. Remember, you said 3 years is a good time for a version of Windows. And that's true when you do it the way they've been doing it. But what if they do it differently now, right? You could make the argument that they don't really have to do much to the desktop, that really the thing that needs the most maturing is going to be this Metro stuff. And, the apps are going to come along as they are. But how do you improve that underlying platform? I mean, how do you improve the Edge stuff, the start screen and all the charms and all that stuff? How do you improve the platform? And maybe the way is not to have a Windows 9. Maybe the way is to do something else. They'll come out with their own name for it, but maybe there's a different way to do it.
The Service Pack the next release, right? Like, couldn't you technically say Windows 8 Service Pack 1? Let's call it Windows 9.
Yeah, they want to be careful about even saying there's going to be a service pack, right? Because as soon as they announce that, everyone who was pretending they were going to upgrade immediately is going to pretend to wait for SB1 now.
But let's talk about the enterprise user here, because when I floated this idea out there through a column saying, what if Microsoft did speed up the Windows development pace? The people who screamed were the enterprise users. Like, no.
But if you keep it Windows 8, maybe those guys are happy with that.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, maybe that's the deal. In other words, what you're avoiding is that massive upgrade cycle, which for those guys it is all kinds of horrible things. But by keeping Windows 8 in the market for a while and then however they do it, remember on the server side for a few years there, for a few product versions, they had this notion of feature packs, which were like these, not service packs are for updates, software updates and security updates. So feature packs were to add features. And the reason they got rid of them is because no one knew they existed and they were hard to find. But, there's this mechanism in Windows where you can update the operating system. So there are different ways you can do it. Maybe Windows 8 stays around.
Yeah, or in some of Microsoft's other product lines, they don't do service packs as much as they do service releases, right? And that's when you can add new features. And that's a whole different thing than a service pack, which these days is supposed to be bug fixes and not features, right?
Right.
But then, another problem comes back again to the enterprise, and a lot of enterprises don't want to update until Microsoft releases a service pack to an operating system, right? So they aren't going to go Windows 8 for a variety of reasons, perhaps, but one will be, I want to wait till Service Pack 1. I want to make sure the thing's baked.
You know, if I actually hear that from someone, I am going to tell those people to their face. I know, we always do. But I mean, if someone actually says, like, I would have upgraded to Windows 8, but I'm waiting for Service Pack 1, I'm just going to say, liar. You liar.
Liar. You are a liar, sir.
I'll take out a white glove and slap him in the face.
You sir.
How dare you.
Prevaricator. I think I think that you could make a strong case from a marketing point of view that you don't need to. But doesn't Microsoft make a huge amount of money on Office is about upgrades, I guess. Windows, they need to keep selling new versions, don't they? I mean, isn't that
I don't know. Not for businesses, because what you really have got them on is a subscription cycle.
That's what they've always wanted. That's the dream, right?
It's what they have, really. I mean, that's what software assurance is. And it provides you with access to those updates. And so, in other words, you have upgrade rights to Windows. So if Windows 9 shipped 1 year after Windows 8, even though no one would want it on the enterprise side, they would have those access rights. Well, what would be better than that? Well, how about an upgrade that doesn't require you to blow away the whole thing and restart from scratch? I mean, how about something that can slipstream very easily into your existing stuff? That whatever it is, Windows 8.1 or something, or Windows 8 SP1 or Windows 8 R2 or whatever, however they call it, assuming it's not. And you can already see, we were just talking about the web-based setup, and they've made all these improvements to the way that Windows is applied and updated. You can blow it away with PC Reset or PC Refresh and start over. I mean, there's all these new technologies in Windows 8 now. I mean, maybe this is a good starting point for a completely different way of upgrading, and a faster way of doing it. They have to see this internally, that this need. One of the things I had talked to someone about, I think for the release preview, was this notion that, look, we're not going to be able to fix some stuff in Windows 8, that people are going to want maybe. Power users like to use multiple monitors, and it's a little limited right now if you want to move between Metro and the desktop. What if it was a little bit better in Windows 8.1 or whatever they're calling it? What if that was one of those things they could address? I don't know.
Maybe the faster upgrade schedule comes to Windows RT first, like they try it out there,
sure.
And wait and see, because the enterprises are going to be using Windows 8, not as much Windows RT probably right out of the gate. So they could try it there. They could see how it works there. I mean, the fact they call Windows RT with no version number makes it seem, right, like this is probably what they're going to do.
Yeah, I think Windows RT has a lot of hints about the future in it.
Yeah.
The future contains a really bad name.
Yeah.
That's
which
what
is
it tells
fine.
me.
But if the product is great, I'll take the bad name.
Yeah. Oh, names are brief. iPad. I mentioned this before. iPad was a terrible name, but nobody thinks about it.
No.
Feminine hygiene.
I do, Leo, every day.
And not anymore. I don't. Somebody suggested, I think this would be a good name for Xbox. You call it Xbox El Ocho.
Yes, I love that name. The Ocho. It'd be Xbox The
Ocho. No, that's terrible. The Ocho.
Tonight on The Ocho.
What was that? That was Dodgeball, right?
Dodgeball.
Dodgeball was such a marginal sport that it took ESPN 8 channels before they started covering
That's where it was, yeah.
But on El Ocho tonight, Dodgeball.
Right.
It is a matter of time.
It's awesome.
So Microsoft apparently is delivering private builds of Windows 8.
Yeah, it's funny, we knew about this.
Well, because you're in with the kits.
No. Well, okay, but I mean, I didn't. In other words, I knew they were doing this. So
Sanofsky didn't call me and ask me.
No, he didn't call me either. Yeah. So they had developer preview, consumer preview, and release preview. But one of the things people didn't really know is that they had consumer preview update 1, consumer preview update 2. They had release preview update.
This is normal, right? They always do this.
Actually, I don't know about that.
No?
I don't recall anything like this from Windows 7, but more to the point, this was secret. In other words, they would approach developers and say, look, we're going to give you an updated build. because we know you're working on an app that's important to us. You can't talk about it. There's an NDA, yada, yada, yada. So fine, they do these things in secret. The thing that's weird about this to me is they just publicly revealed this. Yeah. In a post that was one of the, in what can only be described as a long legacy of bizarre posts over at Building Windows 8. This one kind of takes the cake because it's not that long, but it's just, it's hard to understand what the point of it is.
Hey, do you know we have secret updates?
Well, yeah, it was like people are interested in the final version of Windows 8, and RTM is coming soon. Okay, simple fact. There are more apps coming, and don't worry, they're going to be good apps because we've been giving those guys secret extra builds, and that's pretty much everything that was in the post. That was right. Did I miss any salient points there? No. I think that was the whole thing.
It's this one: readying Metro style apps for launch.
Read the first sentence says, "We know many folks are looking forward to RTM."
Yeah.
By the way, that is 50% of the information in that post. That's half.
Developers currently working on apps in the store are especially excited. Is that the other half?
Yes. No, I'm going to throw out a conspiracy theory here that there was meant to be more to this post that maybe get cut. And you know why I think that?
This is like the X-Files episode.
It was setting you up for them to say, and you know what? And since we're doing all this awesome stuff for developers, guess when the next build conference is? It's October. But there's nothing about the next build conference.
Would October have said something that they didn't want to say yet?
Yes, that's what they're afraid of.
Well, you guys
people would draw the...
You've been reading the tea leaves for so long.
What they said was, we have given developers 8 builds of Windows 8, which is curious because they've only talked about 3 of them. Yeah. So that means they've given out 5 that they haven't talked about. And then later on in there, they do mention, actually it's just right in there. Basically what it is the 3 publicly available versions plus 5 others that they never ever discussed publicly. And I'm still unclear. They even give them the wrong name. It's funny they call them DP45, whatever. It's very strange to me that they would admit this. I don't see any.
I felt weird about it at first because I'm like, oh, they told us there were only going to be 3 builds. But then part of me said, I'm actually glad, even if they had to do this in secret, that there were more builds because it was a really crazy idea to have so few builds being tested by outside the Microsoft community, I felt like.
Who do you think is getting these? I mean, is it Electronic Arts? I mean, it's like the big developers, right? The key guys.
Not always big developers, but yes. I mean,
Rovio,
it's people who are developing apps that Microsoft considers to be key.
Google.
Either because they're huge or because they're filling a gap that they feel is necessary. Right. In other words, you want to make sure there are enough representative apps.
Sure. You got to have the Foursquare app, right? So you get Foursquare a copy of DP7.
Well, listen, I don't even mean necessarily the tier A developers. I mean, some of these people are not tier A developers necessarily.
I think Foursquare is a good example of it's one app.
Well, I would go down even further down the chain, but
even lower down.
Absolutely.
My Precious Fart app. Do you think they got it? Fart Mania?
I hope they didn't.
Well, but it is a really good fart app.
What's
a Metro fast and fluid fart app.
No, but I think so you could say Path, for instance, which is on Android and iPad. Actually, they don't have tablet version of Path. You know what? That's what Flipboard. That's what they want. There's an opportunity for apps that are not on iPad but are on iOS and Android.
Okay.
They could leapfrog.
I wonder, did they give it to Google, do you think? Because they're doing a version of Chrome, right? I mean, the browser.
Well, do you think I guess, although I wonder about that sometimes. I mean, obviously they are making, the Google Chrome thing that was out was not even technically a Metro app, but it behaved like one.
Right.
I don't know. It's hard to say.
What about things like navigation apps?
Mm-hmm.
That might be something that you'd want to have it on Windows RT tablet. I'm just trying to,
Yeah. No, but it's everything. I mean, it's like, Twitter apps.
Twitter, of course. Twitter.
Social network, any social networking apps. Right. I mean, ideally, anything that works with those China
I do want to make a vote for the fart apps because one thing you don't want is a fart app to crash and repeatedly, sometimes they get stuck in a loop is what I'm saying.
I don't know how you'd, categorize that from a taxonomy standpoint in the story.
It's just not about something.
Is it like a sports or entertainment? What are we talking about? You know.
Oh man.
I don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
El Ocho.
The Ocho. Yeah.
The Ocho. Next on The Ocho.
The fact that it's a mix of English and Spanish.
And that's what makes it funny.
That's what makes it funny.
We have there's a chocolate shop, which is a wonderful chocolate shop across the street or down the block. And it's called Viva Cocola. And I want to knock on their door and say, that's Spanish and French. You're not. There's two languages in that. In two words.
Maybe they mean it ironically.
I think they don't know.
Okay,
but that's me. I'm Mr. Pedantic, right? I'm come on. They're going to throw me out. They're going to say no chocolate for you. So I can't afford to say anything. Mary Jo, how you feeling? It's a little hot there. What is the humidity?
Yeah, I don't know what the humidity is. It's like 70% humidity, and it's like 95 here.
And you don't have AC?
I have it off during the show because
God, let's hurry this up.
It makes too much noise.
I'm so sorry. Let's hurry this up.
It's okay. I turned it on full blast before the show started.
Oh, good.
No, we're taking her down with us, Leo.
Paul turns off his too. No, I just so you don't feel alone. I mean, he's also he's kind of sweaty in there, and he's got the door closed, so it's.
I'm good.
Like a hot box.
I'm stewing in my own juices.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. And is this the one where we mention, is this the time we make him cry?
You just want to see
You're dying to say this.
All right. Well, no, I'm not going to say anything. Just let's talk about Windows Server 2012. There's a new SKU.
Yes. We found out about all the new SKUs today.
All the new SKUs.
Right before Windows Weekly came on, which is it feels like Microsoft puts news out right before our show just for us.
So
we can have something
Let's
fun.
make them scramble.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sure.
So we found out today what the 4 SKUs are going to be of Windows Server 2012. And there are a few surprises in here. So there's the Foundation SKU, that's the OEM SKU. There's Essentials, which is the new small business SKU, the Standard, and the Data Center. So Microsoft's trying to cut the number of SKUs in the name of simplicity and making licensing easier. The Standard and the Data Center SKUs are both per processor licensed. So all that seemed to sit pretty well with users until a couple people realized, hey, wait a minute, what about Windows Server Small Business Server? What happens to that? And we found out.
That was kind of telegraphed, though, wasn't it?
I don't know. We found out after we read the small fine print of the FAQ that, hey, guys, there's no more SBS anymore. This is the
SBS
end.
Standard, right?
SBS Standard, right.
Yeah. The previous product version for R2, they did a Small Business Server Standard, and then they did a Small Business Server Essentials. And Essentials is sort of the domain-based version of Windows Home Server. Very minimal server. It integrates with Office 365 if you have it. There's not really much going on. It's pretty much domain. It's the simplest domain I've ever seen, plus storage, I think, is basically the whole server. Whereas the small business server you're referencing is the classic small business server, the one that comes with Exchange, like on-prem Exchange, SQL optionally, SharePoint.
Thanks.
WSUS and the security product is in there. Is the security in there? I think security is in there. So anyway, you get the suite. That's what's gone. But it was so underplayed in the previous version. I think they basically just threw it out there for customers who had been kind of lingering on the previous version and wanted to move up to 2008 R2 and the new versions of the servers. And I guess they're just not doing it this time. I don't think anyone bought it. I just don't think it did well.
Yeah, unfortunately, there seem to be a lot of SBS fans out there because I'm hearing from every single one of them. Oh, man, they are.
Yeah, this is what happens. So you cancel. You stop upgrading Windows Phone 7, and you hear from every one of those guys. You small business server. It obviously a fairly small audience, but a very dedicated audience.
Yes,
and I think there was a little partner community out there too. Independent small businesses or very small, individuals even who supported small business server for the clients, and that was their business or is their business, and I think those people are kind of feeling the heat because there's not really as much you can do on the Essentials product because you pretty much connected for those guys. You can help them get connected to Office 365, but then you're pretty much done other than on a per call basis, and I think that's maybe the big complaint you're hearing probably.
Yeah, probably so.
Or why they're complaining.
This is the hybrid server, right? Essentials is half on-prem, half in cloud, right? Isn't that?
Yeah. I mean, it's so bare bones. It's funny. I mean, it's weird because there's the Windows Home Server is basically identical to the existing Essentials product, except for the domain stuff. And Windows Home Server is obviously optimized and includes digital media sharing functionality right over home network. It's for home users. Yep.
There's some virtualization changes that were made to the lineup as well, and they're so involved. I'm just going to refer people to a post on this because it's too hard to explain this on a podcast. I'd also say one of our listeners, Aidan Finn, has some good explanation on his site about what changes with the VMs around this.
Are you talking about the virtualized instances or just virtualization
virtual operating system environment, the VOSE, VOSE?
So does Essentials and Foundation probably do not even support Hyper-V, I would imagine, but I could be wrong about that. Does Essentials have Hyper-V? I don't know. But I know Standard and Data Center support virtualized instances of that OS running on the same hardware. So with Data Center, as it is today, it's unlimited. And so if you have some honking data center server with multiple processors and cores, you can have however many virtualized copies of the OS running on top of it. And then I think Standard has changed. I think it used to be 1, but what is it, 2 this time? 2 or 4?
I think it's 2.
2.
Let's see. Standard covers 2 CPUs and a host.
No, but what's the virtualized instance?
1 free standard install in a VM on that host.
Just 1. Okay, I think that's what it was before.
No, sorry, it was 1, and now it's gone to 2. See what I mean?
Okay.
This is like
I know it was 1 in R2, so it's now it's 2. Okay, that's good.
Sorry,
that's good.
Yeah. So SBS
Leo, still with
goes
us?
away.
I can't. I don't know. I'm waiting for this week in Enterprise Tech. We'll get a priest in here. We'll get a young priest and an old priest. He'll fix it all.
We're going to need a priest because we have some last rites to do.
That show, I'm so excited for that show. I'm so excited. There's going to be an Enterprise show on
and somebody tweeted it. Well, you can't do it without Mary Jo Foley, and Robert Ballister, the host, Friar Tech as we call him, said, "Of course not. There'll be lots of Mary Jo Foley. You're going to be part of this new show. I know."
Yeah, I'm gonna guest for sure.
It's good. It's exciting. And for those who don't know, and this is probably a show I should mention it. Yes. We're doing 3 new shows this month. We're doing one for the iPhone. I'm sorry, Paul. One for called Know How, which debuts today. In fact, I'm watching them get set up. We're very excited. This is gonna be like the screensavers, where IAS shows me how to do something. This first episode will be Roll Your Own Cloud, and then later this month, I think it's July 24th. I think I'll have to check. We have a blog post I should read on twit.tv. I wrote it, but I don't remember it. It's like Sinofsky. This one was only 1,000 words. I'm working my way up. But this week in Enterprise Tech will debut, July 16th. It's a Monday, noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, 1900 UTC. Father Robert Ballister is the host. Padre SJ on Twitter and in the chat. And it's going to be case study focused. So each week he's going to pick, some of the people that we're talking to. It's going to be exciting. There's a guy from Lockheed Martin. They made a huge, like a $9 billion bid to provide internet access to the South Pole and to Antarctica for the, it's like an SF bid or something like that. And they won it. And so they've been providing, and it's the challenges, for instance, of wiring the South Pole.
Right.
I mean, just great stuff. So I'm very excited. And yeah, Mary Jo's going to be part of it. It'll be Enterprise, but I think what'll be cool, and I want to make sure that it's accessible for people who listen to this show, for instance. So I think what'll be cool will be really about tech, solving a tech problem, whether it's getting your Wi-Fi to work in a very congested environment, things like that. So, and he's good. He's really good.
I was joking with Padre SJ. I said, "Oh man, you got to have like the confessional corner on the show."
Yes, he should totally play that up.
Right, where you can have people come in.
No, listen, you got to do. You have to do a last rights segment where he laments dead technology.
Yes. He could give the last rights to Windows Home Server. I mean, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. Anyway, that's going to be. I'm really excited. I think that's of all the new shows that we're doing, that's the one that's generating a lot of excitement because people have been begging for an Enterprise show. I know you and Mary Jo and a friend of mine were working on one, but we just couldn't figure out a way to make it interesting. I think this case study thing is going to be it. And having a priest host it, Let me tell you, his ad reads are going to be so good. Yeah. You're going to need a young priest and an old priest.
And lo, there was upon the cloud service.
Robert's so good. He has such a good sense of humor about this. And he's such a wonderful guy. And so I'm very excited. July 16th, that show will debut Monday. So we should mention, speaking of blast rights, Paul, you were the guy who told me first about Windows Home Server, who sang its praises, who used it in extreme ways, like setting it up the day before you went to Germany.
Oh, that's true. That's right.
That was crazy.
That was crazy.
You relied on it, and it worked.
It did work.
Yeah. And now,
back in March, I wrote an article where I looked at this feature in Windows 8 called Storage Spaces, and I said, this is conceptually the follow-up to the key Windows Home Server feature, which was Drive Extender, which was taken out of the most recent version of Home Server. And I thought, I wonder if they're going to get rid of this because it seems like no one's really buying it. And maybe that their solution for the future is you have some older PC, which, by the way, now you can upgrade for $40, and you run Windows 8 on there instead of a server, and it's something that everyone understands because it's Windows 8.
Right.
And there are going to be trade-offs to that. And so I kind of looked at that, and by the time I got through writing it, I had pretty much convinced myself that this made a lot of sense and that this is almost certainly what they're going to be doing. Having never heard, even a glimmer of hope from anyone, don't worry, Paul, it's, this thing's going to come forward. But now Mary Jo has driven the proverbial stake through my heart by confirming that they are, in fact, killing Windows Home Server.
But what are they going to put in its place, Mary Jo? Something fabulous.
They're putting they're putting the newly announced Windows Server 2012 Essentials in its place, which is interesting.
Isn't that better?
Maybe. So this is the story. I don't know what Essentials looks like in this Windows Server 2012 guise, and if you could install it in a non-domain setup, which you cannot do today with Windows Server Windows Small Business Server 2011 Essentials, maybe, right? Maybe it's more expensive. What's the price on?
Yeah, $425 for the new one.
That's 4 times as expensive as Home Server.
That's just the operating system. That's not the hardware. That's
right. So.
Yep.
It's a tough one, and I think the guidance. I mean, I haven't decided. I get a lot of questions about this. People have written me a lot this year. If Microsoft were to get rid of Windows Home Server, what are you going to do? What should I do? Obviously, I think most people actually bought Windows Home Server hardware, of which there was not many or not much for this current product. It's something it's an appliance. It runs. It works. You don't have to really think about it too much. And I suppose one of the things I could do is just keep using what I've got. But obviously, I tend to live on the leading edge with the Microsoft stuff. So off the top of my head, I guess my guess is that I will probably move to Windows 8 for this kind of thing. And I will probably do it the night before we go to France this year for a home swap. I don't know.
I was surprised. I was surprised they didn't say Windows 8 or Windows 8 Pro is a successor to this product.
Could it do all the same things, though? Wait a minute, really?
No. And you have to kind of run down the list of what Home Server did to understand the pros and cons of this. But if you're running Windows 8 across the board in your home network, some of the stuff it did you don't really need anymore.
Really?
Right? Because Windows 8 has these built-in capabilities. We'll see. It's a tough call because there are a million little issues, and so this is not the type of thing I'm going to be able to do well off the top of my head. But I'll throw out one little issue: is if let's say you have adopted Windows 8 and you like Windows 8 and you want to use the new Metro apps, and so as of today, the Xbox video app we have, there's no easy way to get it to see content that's on your home server, right? It just doesn't work. What if it was on a different Windows 8 PC? Would that work better? Would that just work? We'll have to wait and see for the RTM version. But, that's one of those things where because of the way these things were made, it's not necessarily optimal and maybe not even possible to do some things that might have been a little more seamless if, say, you were using Windows 7 plus Windows Home Server 2011. And so I need to sit down and really look at all of those issues and kind of figure it out. But people liked things like centralized backup of Windows 7 PCs. But Windows 8 has moved to a new form of backup and recovery. It's completely different. So That's not really part of it anymore. That was a big thing.
Let me read you the Microsoft statement, Paul.
Okay, this is going
to... Okay, I'll take the camera off, Paul, so
right.
he can shed a
tear. Sobbing silently.
Paul, nobody's looking at you right now. You
no
go
one's
ahead
looking
and
now.
just have any feelings you want. Just let them out. We'll look at Mary Jo for a while
Why is the camera on me, Leo?
Damn. He's paying attention.
Let him cry into his beer in peace.
All right.
Okay, so what Microsoft says, this is kind of an interesting thing. The reason they're doing away with it supposedly is Windows Home Server has seen its greatest success in small office and home office environments.
I think that's true, right?
And among tech enthusiasts.
It does have the word home in the name.
Did they actually say tech enthusiasts? Did they say that?
They did.
Good.
They did.
That's Paul.
For this reason...
Did they say tech enthusiast plural or just enthusiast?
Or just Paul?
They put tech enthusiast community and then in parentheses, Paul Thurrott. For this reason, Microsoft is combining the features that were only found in Windows Home Server, like support for DLNA-compliant devices and media streaming,
That's a very cool thing.
Windows Server 2012 Essentials.
Oh, really?
Oh, really?
They're going to put DLNA in that.
No, that's very interesting. Okay, so okay, we're getting closer to what I was
good, yeah.
talking about
that's
before.
Good news.
So it's not all right, but do they address the domain issue?
No, this is a one-paragraph statement. That's all we got.
I would guess if they're putting that kind of media server capability into it, they're paying attention to this, Paul.
Yeah, they talked about storage spaces and having robust data protection for server and client computers.
That's huge,
but they didn't talk about the rest.
What are the features? What are the features that you would expect, Paul? What do you need?
The truth is, I didn't actually use a lot of the stuff that was in Windows Home Server. So, Windows Home Server had things like a web-based interface for accessing content on the server. So you could apply it to a domain name, and you could hit it from anywhere in the world. You could stream your videos or whatever. They also had remote desktop capabilities, so you could get into the server, do drag and drop off of it, and so forth. There's previous versions had Drive Extender, which was data redundancy, but that's part of storage spaces now. It has the DLNA capable streaming stuff has always been part of it. And it's funny when you look at today's Essentials versus Home Server, they're so similar and they have the same add-in model and all that stuff. You could just tell it wasn't going anywhere because some of the more obvious stuff never happened. HP used to make an iTunes server that they would put in their own home server product.
And a lot of NASs have that.
Yeah, anyone could write one of these, but I don't believe there is one for Windows Home Server still to this day, the new version.
If you bought a generic Linux-based NAS, you would get that. Okay. You would get Windows, whatever, media server.
Yeah. The problem is $425 is too much money for a home. So we get to the point where even if this thing could be installed in a non-domain setup, which I'm guessing they're going to support. If Mary Jo could, I'll talk to her after the show. I want to talk to the people who gave her the statement and see what they have to say about that. But that means it would technically be essentially what Windows Home Server was, but it's at 4 times the price. I just don't see people doing it. People are going to buy Windows 8.
I think another thing that's changed, and I think that this is Microsoft recognizing this, is that the idea of the cloud has kind of supplanted a lot of this stuff, right?
Yep.
You just don't need to do it yourself anymore. People are streaming media. They're putting their music on Amazon or Google or iTunes.
You're right.
They don't need this kind of centralized big store server.
I haven't been able to write this because it's so convoluted, but I try to inject this into each of the little mini articles that would be part of a bigger thing where it's about overthinking things. And I think a lot of us in the tech side tend to micromanage stuff, and we spend all this time working on our MP3 collections and moving video collections from hard drive to hard drive and replicating it, and and after a while you realize you're just treading water here. This is stupid.
This is Microsoft's acknowledging this with the word enthusiast right there in their announcement. That's what they're saying.
It's a code word for brain damage.
Yeah, just saying, those of you who like to diddle around with this stuff, go get a Linux NAS because there's no market for that. It's you, Darren Kitchen, and a couple of guys in Alaska.
It's everybody in my Twitter feed
Antarctica soon.
Exactly.
They're all in my Twitter feed.
Yeah, they're all bitching at you. Are they really?
Yeah, no, of course, and understandably, but I with the lackluster response to the 2011 version of this product and the almost absolute lack of hardware for it.
Right.
This isn't super surprising, you know. Yeah. It's too bad. It really was kind of a neat. It is a neat product. It's
By
still
the way,
today.
The article has just emerged on The Verge.
It's on my site. Come on.
Yeah, all about Microsoft.com.
I'm just going to log into my home server and ignore you.
Yeah, but another little interesting tidbit is they are going to continue to support Windows Home Server. It seems through 2016, I think. Although there's in the PDF where this statement came from, I think it says 2025, which I think is a typo.
It's probably 1 year for every user.
They're Zager and Evans fans, and they want to write a song. In the year 2025, if server's still alive, if Paul Thurrott can survive. Actually, somebody wrote another song. I think the Beatles said it best. Wait a minute.
Did they?
Yeah, it was in our chat room. This was from, oh gosh, I got to scroll backwards now to find it because it was cute. It was a, oh, never mind. I can't find it. It's way far back. While Paul Thurrott gently weeps. Something like that.
I don't do anything gently, Leo.
Ken from Chicago. I look at you all, see the love there that's sleeping, while Paul Thurrott gently weeps.
Don't cry for me, Windows Home Server.
Now, this is a test, actually. I'm just curious if YouTube will now block this video saying we violated the EMI copyrights.
I hope so, Leo.
They do that all the time.
For a company that so brazenly rips off the rest of the planet every day of its existence, you know, for them to even pretend that this bothers them.
It's not them. It's the DMCA. They just
no.
But what they've done is, which is really crazy on YouTube, is the DMCA takedown process. There's no humans monitoring it. So there's all these companies in Brazil and places just asserting copyright violations so they can put ads on your content. And nobody's checking this stuff. So, for instance, we did a special on Google I.O., the Google keynotes last week, in which all we did was show the Google I.O. keynote and talk about it. And it is blocked from YouTube now because some company that has nothing to do with it complained.
Even though that's like fair use.
Well, A, it's fair use. B, there wasn't content from anybody but Google, who, last time I checked, owns YouTube. So I don't understand. This happens all the time.
You know, not to get completely back on topic. Go
ahead, please.
I'm good with the segue stuff. It just occurred to me. What about storage server? Is there going to be
I think there is going to be another. Yeah.
There is going to be another storage server.
Yeah. One of Aidan Finn again says there is going to be a storage server, he thinks.
It seems like storage spaces would make for an excellent storage server.
Yeah. It does.
Okay.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And here's the actual statement from the Microsoft statement. A statement within a statement, embedded. Windows Home Server 2011 will be available as an OEM embedded product till December 31st, 2025. It is 2025 and will remain available in current channels until 2013. I ask you,
what man would want him now?
I know.
Break out the Narragansett. This is time to celebrate.
Well said.
What man would want him now? Is that a reference to something?
I don't know.
I like it.
Windows Home Server 2011. It's 2024. Do you have a 13-year-old version of software that never sold even when it was brand new? I'd like to install that on a piece of hardware and protect my data with it. You know, seriously? Why? What's the point of that? That's like just rubbing. It's just like it's a little salt in the wound. We're going to keep it in the market.
We believe that Paul Thurrott needs to be served.
You didn't just kill it. You're dragging it around behind you with a horse. You know? What the hell is that? Why would you do that?
It's dead. Bury it.
I'm not going to rip off the Band-Aid. I'm going to slowly peel it back.
That's good.
For 15 years.
That's good.
You're going to feel this one for a while.
Oh, I got a new show title. Let me write that down.
Oh, that's sad.
Now, this is actually, to me, I thought this was going to be the big story. We kind of buried it. Actually, there's two. But the Vanity Fair article, whoa.
Oh, come on. Whoa.
Downfall of Microsoft? Now, it is Vanity Fair.
Right. Where I often turn to for... Actually, I wrote that in the notes. As I often turn to Vanity Fair to find out what's happening at Microsoft.
They're the best tech journal out there. No, they're good for gossip, though.
And, you know, this story... There's nothing inaccurate in this story.
Right.
So it's like a 10-page story in the August issue of Vanity Fair that's coming out. I've read it. I got a copy of the pages. Oh, friends, enemies. But I read it, and you know what? All I could think was every piece of this story has already been told. And it's not going to be a surprise to people in the tech world who have followed the tech industry very closely. I mean, one of the things was people at Microsoft hate stack ranking, which is their performance management system. Yep, they do.
Yep, they do.
They've hated it for 5 years. And I think the reporter on the Vanity Fair story had never heard of it before, and to him it was a new thing. But all he had to do was go to the mini Microsoft blog for endless rants about how horrible stack ranking is and what it's done to Microsoft and how people hate it.
What is it?
So it's called stack ranking. And so if you're in a team, I'm going to do a rough explanation. If you're in a team of 10 people, you know going into your review, like one person is going to be booted off the island. It's like Survivor.
Ooh.
How do I even know this? I don't have a TV. It's like Survivor, except...
No, I've heard of... it's not just Microsoft. I've heard other companies do this, but that is horrible.
Lots of other companies do it. And
two men are going in, only one's coming out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you're in a team of 10, you know one of you is not going to survive your review.
And by the way, that's the official... I'm showing the cover picture from this article. That's the official stack ranking picture of Steve Ballmer. He's got thumbs going in two different directions. One of you's going in.
Yeah.
And one of you's
I'm
going
guessing
out.
he's always been the one coming out.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That is... even the use of that picture is...
Yeah.
Pretty offensive. It's pretty aggressive. It's pretty slanted. Yeah.
No, and the rest of the article is revisiting things that happened at Microsoft in like 2001, 2003, like when different teams were duking it out and one team won. You know, he talks about Longhorn. He talks about WinFS. I mean, okay, this is in Vanity Fair. Like, do you think the readers are going to care about WinFS?
God, if only they had done the SQL-based file system, everything would have been fine at Microsoft.
Well,
I know.
That was the beginning of the toilet flush.
Good on, I think that's great. I mean, Vanity Fair has had very good reporters like Dominic Dunn and stuff in the past, and I think that they're showing that they want to be in the tech business.
Yeah.
Who wrote this, though? I don't see a byline on the website. It just says by Vanity Fair.
It's like I am hit job.
Yeah.
No. The guy who wrote it is a very well-known and award-winning journalist who used to work for the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. So I mean, it's like I said, it's not a hatchet job. Right. It's not, but it's a story where if you do what we do and you listen to podcasts like Windows Weekly, you will read it and go, "Yeah, I already knew all that."
Right.
All right, so is the issue just that, I mean, obviously people who read this magazine don't know a lot about Microsoft. I mean, is there any truth or is there any validity to this notion that the past decade was lost? Right? Well, was the last decade lost? I mean, is that fair to even say? I don't know. Is it?
It depends on your perspective and how much you like or dislike Steve Ballmer, basically. He's been the CEO for the past decade. This is what the decade reference is.
Yep.
So, I found a post that I thought did this topic so much better justice. It's somebody who I read quite a bit. His name is Hal Berenson. He is a former Microsoft distinguished engineer who is on his own doing consulting work now. And he wrote about the three phases of Steve Ballmer's leadership at Microsoft. And he talked about, at the beginning it was rough. He was taking the handoff from Bill Gates. It was hard for him to put his own stamp on things. He said then the next phase was a lot of confusion, a lot of bad decisions. It was like, what are you doing, Ballmer? And he feels like we're entering now into a third phase where Steve Ballmer is finally putting his own stamp on Microsoft, not having to kind of undo things that were not correct decisions from the past, and that things are going to get better. Now, I don't know if I agree with all three phases, but I feel like phases 1 and 2, he got those down pat.
You got to think that the Vanity Fair article was filed before the Surface announcement.
Yeah.
And that was really the stage 3 Ballmer. That was the reinvention, right?
True. Oh, yeah, that's a really good point.
So they might have actually kind of missed it.
Weird.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I think there's a case to be made that others have made, and I've made certainly, that, you know, we're seeing a renaissance of sorts at Microsoft. I mean, between Windows 8 and Windows Server 2012 and Office 15 or 2013 and the next Xbox and these Surface tablets and everything, I mean, there's some interesting stuff going on there. And
there is. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
I mean, and he's having to make some unpopular decisions too. Like, I mean, you know, there are people who hate the idea of Microsoft killing Windows Home Server, like Paul Thurrott. And then there are people, there's people who hate the whole
but I understand
thing.
it. You know what? Right. The truth is, I feel bad because it never got the attention I felt it deserved. But like Leo said, the world is moving on, and it is moving on. And that this kind of product, which made, you know, a lot of enthusiast types wanted 5-6 years ago, whatever, suddenly doesn't make any sense, I think, anymore. And as much as I like it and use it, I get it. I mean, I do understand it. Some people who criticize...
that's not the best choice.
Yeah, no, some stuff... listen, I get emails from people who are still saying, I don't understand why Microsoft hasn't updated I don't remember the name of the app, but some app on Windows Mobile. Right. And it's like, really? You're still beating that horse. Like,
they're making... This is tough love right now in a lot of things, right? Like having to make your own tablet. It's tough love time. And it's also tough love time for all of us enthusiasts who got Windows phones and we're not going to get upgrades.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, this is how you have to run a company sometimes.
Right. There's a cute thing you can do when you do what we do, where you look at Microsoft making their own tablet. And like, oh, there goes their whole tablet their whole partner ecosystem. Ha, 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 ha. You know, but... You know, there's no partner ecosystem if Microsoft goes away.
Right.
So sometimes you do have to make the tough decisions and do the right thing for the company, because otherwise it all goes away. You know, and unfortunately, when you're babysitting the part that's, you know, maybe affected by this thing, you don't see it necessarily in the clearest light. And you got to look at the big picture. I know people disagree with some of the directions they're taking with Windows 8, but what I would say to those people is, you know what? They're making a big bet. God bless them for that. This is not what Microsoft has done historically, and for that so-called lost decade, certainly not what they were doing, you know, during that time period. Same thing with the Surface. You may disagree with it, whatever, but, you know, they're making a big bet. Microsoft always talks about how it's betting the company on whatever, and it never is. But, you know, actually, in some ways, these things to me are fairly dramatic initiatives, that they really are big bets. And I like to see them make big bets, because the last one they made, which was on Longhorn, went horribly. And I never thought they would ever make a big bet like that this quickly. And so this is a neat time to be, not to be alive, but I mean, to be covering this stuff, you know, to be interested in I don't, it's not that dramatic. I mean, you know, it's not my entire life, but I mean, it's a neat time in technology.
Yeah. You know, I pointed out in the piece I wrote about the Vanity Fair piece, my last part was, you know, just not that long ago, people would say to me, you know, why are you covering Microsoft anymore? It's a dying company. And now you see people like Gizmodo saying the most amazing and compelling company in tech, the most interesting company, it's Microsoft. And it's like, wow, hey, I guess I'm back in vogue again.
I've had this conversation with people in the opposite direction. You know who, you know, Long Zen obviously is the guy behind I Started Something, and he does the Metro TWiT application. And a couple of years ago, we were at some industry conference. He's a young guy, you know, and I said to him, I said, look, I get people my age doing Windows, and, you know, when I was a young guy, Windows was the big thing, and Microsoft was the big thing, and obviously the world's changing. And how is it that someone in their early 20s, you're a Windows guy? Like, how did that happen? You know, and he was confused by that question, and I'm not really sure there's a good answer to it. But it seems like a lot of the up-and-coming blogger-type people are not Microsoft guys at all. In fact, they're kind of the opposite of Microsoft guys. They're Apple or Google, or they write about gadgets, and Microsoft is just a peripheral thing for them. It's, you know, if Microsoft does this transition right, that's going to change. You know, you need to get you can't just make good stuff. You have to change the perceptions.
Hearts and minds.
Yeah.
Or as Lyndon Johnson once said, you get them by the short hairs, and their hearts and minds will follow.
I knew it wasn't going to be I was wondering, I'm trying to picture some like warm and cozy thing he could have said.
No. It's Lyndon.
There you go. That makes sense. I'm like, you're going to misquote this guy. I can tell. Nope.
No, that's Lyndon. Okay. So the other huge story And that if you were reading the Vanity Fair article, another one that kind of happened after, I'm sure after it got filed, is a quantive. And this is where there was a lot of ink saying Microsoft really, I mean, that's $6 billion write-off.
Ouch.
Ouch.
Well, but
and it's ancient history. Admitted, it was under Ballmer's tenure, but it was years ago, right?
Actually, I was going to take the opposite tack to say that purchase never made any sense. You remember Microsoft was trying to fight the double click. Well, they wanted double click and lost to Google. Then they tried to prevent double click from going to Google by going to the DOJ, I believe. And this was this was like their rebound purchase, right? At the time, it was the biggest purchase that Microsoft ever made, I believe. And it just never made any sense because these guys were never double click. They were never going to be as good as double click. I don't understand. Then, if you were to go back and look at what I wrote about it then, I'm sure I wrote something critical about it in the context of a news story because it just didn't make any sense. Who are these people? And now what they're saying is years later, it didn't work out. Just never made any sense.
They bought them in 2007 is when they bought a quantive for $6 billion. And I remember people at the time going, wow, I guess they're really serious about this online advertising stuff. They just spent $6 billion. And that was their biggest acquisition to date. In 2007, that was the biggest one of all. And people were kind of scratching their head. Like Microsoft bought a company that has a digital ad agency, which was what Razorfish was. And they were kind of surprised. And then Microsoft ended up selling off that part of the bid. They sold off Razorfish a year or two later for $500 million. So they kept the rest of it until now they're just saying, we're going to keep some of the tools we got with them when we bought them, but that's pretty much it. And the rest is just a wash, pretty much.
I wrote in 2007, this purchase is a sign of weakness for Microsoft.
I think everybody said
that's what I wrote. I'm just... I went back and looked.
No, we knew, and it was exactly because they were chasing somebody else.
I knew without looking that I was critical of this. Yeah. Does anyone else find it telling that Microsoft's most expensive acquisition is for a company that few people have ever even heard of?
Right.
It's just bizarre.
It was.
Yeah, Microsoft spent so much money on Quantive because it was truly scared of Google's ever increasing market power.
Yep.
That's the only reason they did. It was a reactive move, and it's just not the type of thing they do well, Well,
and I got to point out that this continues to happen. Look, I mean, you could say that about Yammer, to be honest.
Well, only because to me, I don't understand why they needed it.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know about Skype. Maybe you can make it because Skype.
Yeah, because you see all the incredible integration they've done with that so far.
I'm just saying, companies, not just Microsoft, other companies do this. Instagram, other companies do this all the time because they're scared.
Keep it away from other people.
Yeah, and buying something because you're scared doesn't seem like
that's not good business. And I don't know. On the flip side, the one thing I will point out, and actually Mary Jo has a note there about preparing for a potential Bing sell-off. I mean, I don't know that the quantive thing tells us anything about the rest of what we would call Microsoft's online business, right? I mean, Bing is doing okay. Obviously,
it's a money loser. It's not doing okay. It's a money loser.
It's
I meant the reason okay.
What do you mean by doing okay, Paul? It's not losing as much as it's. Yeah. Okay, good.
No, the reason that was just pure speculation on my part. Because they're cleaning up online services, which keeps losing tons of money, like multiple millions every quarter.
But it's an investment mode. That's investment mode.
Yeah. Right. They keep saying it's in investment mode. Yeah. And then we found out fairly recently that, by the way, Microsoft shopped Bing around to Facebook not so long ago. So, I'm like, oh, wow, I wonder if they're cleaning it up to sell it. Because so many Wall Street analysts say, Microsoft, you've got to sell Bing. It's killing you. It's gonna be the death of the company.
A search engine bake sale.
Okay, what's this piece of Bing?
Kickstarter. They should go to Kickstarter and say,
I don't think they're going to sell Bing. I really don't. They're integrating Bing into everything now at Microsoft, aren't they? I mean,
yeah.
It's going to be hard to untangle it.
Couldn't they lose less money on Bing if they didn't market it as hard?
Is it surprising that Windows Search in Windows has never been called Bing Search?
Yeah.
Should that be surprising, or is that okay?
No. That's the Xbox
Windows
thing
Phone,
again.
you have the Bing button, right? And you say Bing.
Yes, and in Xbox you have Bing Search. It's very clearly Bing Search. Right. It looks like the website. Yeah. So you've got Bing is on Xbox and Bing is in Windows Phone, but it's not in Windows.
Yeah.
So and is very clearly Bing search is a huge thing in Windows 8, right? It doesn't even say powered by Bing.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, does that mean something?
Well,
or is that just Windows is Windows and we get to do whatever we want?
This is typical Microsoft, where you've got internecine warfare, and yeah, exactly. The Windows
I mean, if you're really
no.
concerned about, if you're going to push brands like they should be, even if Windows Search has zero to do with Bing, technically, my argument is it should say powered by Bing on the search results page, because it puts Bing into your head.
Well, don't they put, though, you get, in Windows 8 anyway, Bing is very prominent, and you have Bing wallpapers.
No, it's Bing is not very prominent. I mean, not by default. You know, Windows 8 will have a Bing
app, right?
There will be a Bing app, but I mean, there are many. And even the apps that are, by the way, there are several Bing apps aside from the Bing app. So news, travel, sports, and weather, and actually maps.
Powered by Bing.
They're all technically Bing Maps, Bing Weather, but they're not called that. They're just called Weather, News. You know, they're really kind of downplaying the Bingness of those apps. Other than, I would say, Maps is maybe the one exception.
That would lend credence to Mary Jo's kind of speculation that they might not want to hardwire it into your new thing if you're going to sell Bing.
If it's not going to be around.
Yeah, or maybe you just want to leave that open.
Yeah, I think I'm being more contrarian than actually believing my own speculation.
Yeah, and I think
going to keep Bing.
Yeah, I think you can excuse what I was talking about as the lack of Bingness in Windows to being it's Windows. Right. Windows is the most powerful group of Microsoft.
Right. You don't mess with it.
We're not going to put Bing brands on anything. This is Windows Search. I think that would be the argument.
Right.
You know, there.
Right.
But yeah.
We're going to take a break. We've got some great picks from Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley, our Enterprise Pick of the Week, our Enterprise Code Name of the Week, Paul's tips. But first, I got a tip for you. I got your tip right here, audible.com. It's summertime. And to me, summertime reading doesn't have to have a book attached to it. You don't want to get sand in your Kindle. How about listening to a book, lying on the beach, the sun beating down on your sweaty forehead, and you're listening to Dustin Hoffman performing Being There. Wouldn't that be fun?
No.
No.
No, Leo, that's terrible.
And then I said, wait a minute, I gotta hear this. Wait a minute.
Is it safe?
I like to watch.
Chance began walking the 3 flights upstairs. He did not trust the elevator since the time Black Louise...
No, see, he's great. I love Dustin. I want to listen to this. He's great. So anyway, look, this is audible.com. It is the best audiobook store. It's the only audiobook store. More than 100,000 titles now with apps not only for iOS and Android, but the new Windows Phone app is out as well. And that's great because that means your Audible library is on your phone. You can listen to any of the books you've ever listened to forever. I mean, I'm such a huge fan.
You know what's interesting about Audible for Windows Phone is obviously we've been waiting for this thing for 18 months or whatever. Constant, worrying and gnashing of teeth. Is it ever going to happen? Is it ever going to happen? So they released this thing maybe 2 weeks ago. They've already updated it like 2 or 3 times. Yeah. Like they're
keeping an eye on it.
Yeah, they're moving along with it. Yeah. It's nice.
I think it's great. This is a great way to listen, but you can of course listen on almost any device. You can a lot of GPS devices, things like that.
Windows Mobile.
Windows Mobile. Windows Mobile. BlackBerry, ladies and gentlemen. You ever hear of them? There was a little phone operating system go back a little ways. Audible for BlackBerry. Look at that. I'm sorry. No.
It's like you're looking at an 8-track player or something.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's the good old days. I miss my BlackBerry. No, that was the last phone I had before I went iOS. Anyway, 100,000 books, great books. You can get your first book free at audible.com/windows. I really think for the summertime, this is a great time to try Audible out. Bring that book with you on your next family trip or at the beach or at the lake house, wherever you are, enjoying the weather, enjoying the break. Enjoy audible.com. Audible.com/windows. That'll sign you up for the gold account. That's a book a month. Your first month's free. You cancel at any time, but that book will be yours to keep forever. And Paul's got a great recommendation. Is this a new one from Stephen King?
No, this is an old one from Stephen King. But I've been going back and rereading some of his older stuff. I read Salem's Lot recently. In fact, my wife
just downloaded it. I just because you recommended it.
It's so fantastic.
Yeah,
it really is fantastic. Yeah. And coincident to that, got a list from my son's school of acceptable summer reading and was interested to see that there were many, many Stephen King books on there.
Good.
Salem's Lot wasn't one of them, which makes a little bit of sense because there's some sexuality in it, and it is a little bit adult. But one of the ones I was curious to see was in there was Night Shift, which is his first short story collection. And, one of the things that's great about Stephen King is that he ties a lot of his stories in together. So if you're familiar with The Stand, which is his epic book about the end of mankind, basically, with the flu, there's a story about the flu that's in The Stand. If you're familiar with Salem's Lot, there are 2 stories about vampires from Salem's Lot in this book as well. And, I think something like 75% of these stories have been made into movies, which is hilarious. The book is broken down. I'm not sure if it's every single short story from Night Shift, but there are 3 collections you can get on Audible. So they're named similarly, but it's The Lawnmower Man and Other Stories from Night Shift. Lawnmower Man, of course, was a horrible movie, but is a great short story. Graveyard Shift and Other Stories from Night Shift, and also Gray Matter and Other Stories from Night Shift. So when I talked to my son, I actually convinced my son is actually going to read this book this summer. Good. Yeah, I'm very intrigued by that.
Good.
This was the first Stephen King book I ever read. In fact, I babysat for a family up the street between the 7th and 8th grade, and the father of the family had been reading the book, and so I started reading it one time during the day, and it scared the living heck out of me. And I would read parts of it and put the book down, and I'd walk outside, and check on the kids and just be in the sun for a little while. Then I'd come back and I'd read a little bit more.
I love it.
It's fun. It's funny to reread it now. It's a little tamer, to me now, obviously, but at the time it was the scariest thing I'd ever seen in my life.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's, I am listening to The Stand still. That's a long book.
Yeah, and you will be.
No, I'm in the. I think they've divided it into 6 files. They try to keep the files around 100 megabytes download, or 200 if you're listening. Yep. By the way, they have an enhanced mode.
Enhanced,
now.
Yeah, you got to do enhanced.
Oh, sounds great. CD quality,
night and day.
Yeah.
Night and day.
So that enhanced mode is about 200 megabytes, and they divide it into 200 megabyte files. And so there's 5 or I think there's 6. For The Stand, it goes on and on and on.
It's big,
but I'm down to the last 2 now. I'm happy to.
It's a sign of a good book like that when it's that long. That book is probably 1,100 pages long now. You don't want it to end.
No,
that's one of those. It's just and actually Salem's Lot was like that too. Same thing.
Yeah,
it's just great.
On your recommendation, that's the new book I got. I have a subscription, so I love this every month. That on the 22nd of the month, I get to pick. I have my next 2 books because I love Audible so much. Anyway, try it free. Audible.com/Windows. Windows. All right, Paul, why don't you kick things off with your tip or whatever it is that you're doing?
Whatever. I don't even. Microsoft has been changing SkyDrive, the service, dramatically this year. They've added tiered storage, at cost, which is great. They've released mobile apps on all the major platforms, or will soon. And they've released an application now, finally, for Windows. I think it's Vista 7 and 8, where you can now access SkyDrive directly from the Windows shell. And this makes this service, which used to offer 25 gigs of storage for free, but was completely worthless because you had to use the web, and it was kind of a lame web uploader, and now completely usable. And so people who had SkyDrive before still get 25 for free. If you're new to the service, you get 7 gigs for free, which is better than iCloud or Amazon or Dropbox. It's still a tremendous deal, and the page storage is cheaper as well, by the way. So very viable service, and obviously for people on Windows, turning into the go-to service. And I think we're going to see some changes this year around Windows Phone and the Xbox as well, which will make this even better. So I had been using and recommending Live Mesh for this type of thing for what I would call PC-to-PC sync of documents and other files, but also PC to cloud sync, right? Because Live Mesh had that 5 gig component in the cloud, but now you can do it all through SkyDrive. And I've written a very lengthy article about my own move to this, so rather than go on too long about that, I would just point people to the article, which is in the show notes. And I kind of explained the history of Microsoft's various PC sync products very briefly, and how I was using Live Mesh and how I made the transition and so forth. So
2001, a cloud odyssey, he calls it. I like it.
2012, a cloud odyssey.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, we really wouldn't want to hear what you did in 2012.
Yeah, no, it's not interesting. It involves floppy disks. The one piece I'm probably going to do a small series of tips about SkyDrive. I've gotten some interesting things from readers. One thing I would point out is some people that don't want to do this are saying that because SkyDrive doesn't support any kind of file replication, or the ability to go back if you delete a file and get it back.
Version history.
Essentially.
Yeah.
If you use it with Windows 8, you can turn file history on. And file history is versioning, and it works across SkyDrive. I was, in fact, just playing with that. So SkyDrive, or rather file history, which is essentially file versioning, or what Apple calls
Wasn't this supposed to be in Windows 7?
It was in Windows 7. It was called previous versions.
Yeah.
But no one even knew it existed.
Right.
So now they have file history, which also no one will even know exists because it's not. It's crazy.
Where do they hide it? Is it in the settings?
It is. Yes, it's completely hidden.
Okay.
Which is why I keep writing about it, because I want people to use this. It's very valuable to have. It works. It's funny. Ideally, what you have is an external drive or a network location where you can save your file history too. In fact, one of the pieces of advice I have about that is to use Windows Home Server as a central location for that. But whatever. But you need to turn it on. And if you have a laptop, actually any machine, but let's say a laptop, because you would take a laptop outside the house, by default, it will use, I think it's 5% of your disk to cache that information locally as well. So even though you're backing up to a central location, it's also caching it on the disk. And so if you delete a file on your laptop when you're on the road, you should be able to go back to an older version from there as well. And if you're using SkyDrive, that's a file that could, in fact, have been sitting in SkyDrive. And so if you blow that thing away by mistake, you can get it back through file history. So that's an interesting instance of where using two of these kind of emerging Microsoft technologies, SkyDrive in the cloud and file history in Windows 8, can kind of work together, for a more complete solution. So something to think about.
Cool. So that was kind of a double tip. You got a software pick for us?
It's a 2-for-1. Yeah. Metro TWiT, which is I would call it my favorite Windows-based Twitter application, has been updated for Windows 8. So there's a Metro version of Metro TWiT. So now can
you just get him to rename it to Metro Tweet?
I know. I've talked to him about that. But I think unfortunately, there are a lot of Twitter apps that are named something Twit. It seems like a fairly common.
Yeah, and Twitter actually deprecated it. They tried to get people. They've trademarked Twitter, and they trademarked Tweet and said, you can use Tweet. Please use Tweet.
It should be called Metro Twitter, I think.
Or Metro Tweet.
Metro Tweet.
But we don't want Twit.
Yeah, sorry about that. But it is a great app, and it has a nice configurable view where you can put up the columns that you want, and obviously it's a full screen immersive Metro style app. But it's done very nicely, and he had a nice little beta program. I was able to provide a little bit of feedback, and they were very responsive to that kind of stuff. It's a neat app, and so if you want a standalone app for Twitter and are running Windows 8, I think that would be it's definitely the best one that's there now, and it was my favorite in classic versions of Windows as well. So. Something to check out as well.
Metro Tweet.
Tweet.
Metro Tweet. And I think time for an enterprise pick. So for that, I will throw it to the sweltering hot Mary Jo Foley.
I know. Do I look as hot as I feel?
No, you look fine, but I just
my palms are
I feel for you.
Right
we want to get this over with so you can turn the AC back on.
So my enterprise pick of the week is the Microsoft Worldwide Partner Conference, which I am going to be at next week. It's in Toronto, Canada.
Toronto. It'll be cooler there.
Yay.
Yeah.
I know. I can't wait to go to Canada.
Yeah.
Yay. And, a lot of tech press kind of ignore this show because they say, oh, it's a partner show. It's not going to be that interesting. I go every year, and there's always great stuff hidden that you guys will be hearing about from Canada next week when I do Windows Weekly from Canada. But they always do really good roadmaps, because they have to tell their partners to some degree what they're doing. Unless you work in Windows Client, then you don't. But all the other divisions will be there. Like Office is going to be there, and Windows Server and Azure. All the teams are going to be talking about kind of what's next. I don't think we're going to hear about the next Office beta yet. I think maybe not yet. But the head of Office is speaking at the Worldwide Partner Conference next week. So that should be pretty interesting. And the session that always is super interesting at these things is done by Microsoft's COO, their Chief Operating Officer named Kevin Turner. And this guy, he is like a one-man show at the Worldwide Partner Conference. He gets up there and he goes into preacher mode and just starts railing on Microsoft's competitors. And he gets everybody wound up. He goes on Salesforce tirades and Oracle tirades, Apple tirades. He loves to go after Apple. And so all the Microsoft faithful who are there, you're like, yay. So it's always entertaining. And what else should I tell you about Partner? I'm going to be hosting a tweet up on the first night of Partner Conference in Toronto. So, yep, we've been tweeting about that. So if you're going, you should make sure to come to our tweet up on Monday night. And we're going to be taping a couple of live things there. I'm going to be doing the Align IT podcast about the cloud with Microsoft Canada and doing Developer Cube show. So, yeah, there's going to be lots of good stuff next week and lots of stuff on the blog and lots of good fodder for Windows Weekly. So watch for Partner stuff next week. Oh, and their surprise guest keynote Microsoft's having is Deepak Chopra. I know you guys will not want to miss that.
That's a surprise.
Yeah, they've had who did they have one time? They had Bill Clinton one time. They have really unusual surprise guests at those things. So
wow,
Deepak will be there. Yeah, I don't know what the Microsoft connection will be, if any, but there you go.
I'm trying to think how Ayurvedic medicine could tie into Windows 8.
I know. That would be an interesting.
And the 8th chakra. You must.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
That's good, Lee.
Yes.
I bet it is the 8th chakra.
The 8th chakra. That's what it is. Yeah.
Because it's all about El Ocho, right?
El Ocho. The Ocho.
The Ocho.
Let's see. I guess, do you have a code name for us?
I do, and it's just to make Paul cry one more time.
Wow.
Code name of the week
you both.
is.
I hate you.
I'm sorry. Code name of the week is Veil. Veil was the code name for the last version of Windows Home Server that Microsoft released in March 2011. And it was part of this whole family of Colorado code names that Microsoft was doing at that time. There was Aurora, there was Breckenridge, there were all these variants of Windows Server that all had Colorado-based code names. So Veil was Windows Home Server, RIP, as we know.
By the way,
today.
the name of my home server on the network is Veil for that reason.
Oh, that even rubs more salt in the wound. Sorry.
I can take it a little bit.
Oh, Paul. We do this show Thursdays, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 1800 UTC for those of you outside of the U.S. And we love it if you watch live, but you don't have to. We make on-demand versions available almost right after the show. It just takes us a little time to encode those and put them up at twit.tv/dubdub or on iTunes or the Zune Marketplace or wherever you can find podcasts. Paul and Mary Jo, have a great week. Stay cool. Turn the AC back on.
Yes.
We'll see you next time on Windows Weekly.